Well, good morning. Who has had a situation like that with your kids? It's a good one. I actually did it just yesterday just to see what it felt like. It's exfoliating. That's the word you're looking for. Well, good morning. Welcome to Iron Ridge. I'm glad to see you all here. It's nice to see you all come today, even though it's just frigid outside. It's nice to see you here at church. There's been some big things going on. Actually, in my own life, just recently here, we adopted a dog, which was interesting. Used to be owned by a blacksmith. When it got home, it made a bolt for the door. And then he was home secure. Who didn't get that? No, I didn't adopt a dog. We got plenty of dogs. I don't need any more. But today we are starting a brand new series called Address the Mess. It's a great series. What was just happening in that video is a perfect example of what we're going to be looking at, which is the messes that we put ourselves into and what they really look like. Because sometimes we don't notice the messes we're in. Sometimes we don't notice the mess that we've made. We don't even notice that it's a mess sometimes. And we really need to take a look at ourselves in the mirror and see what those messes look like. So today we're going to kick off this brand new series really talking about us first and what it looks like to see that mess in the mirror. Now, I know what some of you are probably thinking. You're going to look at your lives at this moment while you're here, while we're looking through these different things. And the first thing you're going to say is, what mess? My life is fine. I don't have any problems. Things aren't going badly. There's no mess. But see, sometimes just like the kids, you need somebody on the outside looking in to kind of tell you, your life is just a mess right now. Sometimes you don't always see that. Sometimes messes are not perceived as messes when they should be, and sometimes messes are perceived as messes when they're actually not. So we can very easily get confused as to what a mess looks like if we don't have help from other people, if we don't have help from God, if we don't have a better understanding of what these messes really look like, we can't really define them. Now, some of our messes may include things like this: relational messes. I just went to my in-laws yesterday for a Christmas, and it's all relational stuff. Everything there is relational, especially if they're your in-laws. It's like you're being hurled into some tribe somewhere that you have no idea what any of it was about before you got there. So now you're hearing all these stories and you're seeing them laugh about things and you're going, I don't get that. Because there can be relational messes. Sometimes you have relational messes at home. Sometimes you have them at work. But most of our messes come from relationships, family messes with the kids and with your parents, or as parents, financial messes. We really don't have the money to pay the bills this week. I just spent all my money on a new TV, and now I have to pay for something else like a dental bill. Sometimes it seems like as soon as you spend it, you need it. You ever notice that? And boom, you're in a mess. You have physical messes, maybe diseases or illnesses or mental problems like I have every single day. That can be messes and then get you into trouble. Habitual messes, things you do over and over again, you just can't seem to get past. Maybe it's a drug addiction. Maybe it's a news addiction. Maybe it's a social media addiction. Things that we just can't get over. Habitual things we do over and over again. These are just some of our messes. And you know what? You may be between messes. You may be about to be in one. You may have just gotten out of one. Messes are all around us. Messes happen all the time. So you might just be lucky and in between messes at the moment. And that's great. Enjoy it while it lasts, because there's one coming. I guarantee it. You've made your own mess. Maybe it's 100% your fault that you're there. Maybe you did it all to yourself and you're thinking, why did I listen to me? Because we can get ourselves into these messes. Maybe you've made your own mess and you're in the middle of it. Maybe you've married a mess. Both physically and otherwise. Maybe the person you've married just can't seem to put clothes in the hamper. I have 4 hampers in my room because my wife keeps putting them in places that I left clothes in hopes that I would throw them in there. But now it's a game because I'm trying to see how many hampers I can get in my room. Because maybe we married a mess. Maybe the husband just isn't doing the things that he should. Maybe the wife is just acting a way that she shouldn't. Maybe we've really married into a mess and we have to work through it because marriage in general is a mess. And it takes time to work through it and fix it and work through the problems and the issues and the idiosyncrasies of each other. And marriage can be a mess sometimes. You may be in the middle of a parenting mess. Maybe you're parenting multiple messes. Maybe it's nothing but messes with them. If it's not one thing, it's another. And with your kids, it's probably 4 or 5 another's. Because it's mess after mess. Maybe you're parenting some messes right now and you don't know how to do it. You just don't know how to take care of them. You don't know how to discipline. You don't know how to get them to mind. You just don't know if you want them to be around anymore. Because you're parenting some messes at the moment. Maybe you may have gotten dragged into someone else's mess. Somebody calls you up on the phone. Somebody says, hey, and they're sobbing and I can't do this anymore. Help me. And next thing you know, you're over there and you're trying to work through what's going on. Maybe someone else's mess has now become yours. But the recurring theme here is that everybody is in a mess at some point or another, whether it was brought on by yourself or other people or your kids or your spouse or your coworkers. Life is just one big mess. And yes, there's some great times when you're in between them. There's some great times when you finally figure that out. Boy, doesn't that feel good when you finally solve the mess you've been in for so long. But there will be another one right around the corner. Because life is just one big mess sometimes. So that seems like such a downer. That seems so bad. It seems like, life can't be all bad, right? No, and it's not. And there's some good news. There's some things that we need to know about the messes that we're in, the lives that we're living, the lives that we're affecting other people. There is some good news to come with that. And first and foremost, it's this. You are genetically geared towards messes. Own it. Make it part of your life. It's okay. You're messy. So am I. We all do things. We all get in messes. We all get in problems. We all do stupid things sometimes. We all watch other people do stupid things sometimes. And that's at least fun. But people do crazy things. People get in crazy messes. And sometimes life can just bear down on you over and over again because it's one mess after another. Finances seems to be a big deal there because it seems like as soon as you pay for one thing, another thing needs to be paid for. When's the last time you got paid and you went, you know what? I've got $1,500 just to blow on stuff this week. Never. That never happens. It's as if life is waiting for you to feel comfortable just for a moment so it can press the bad button and something will go wrong. Because life can just become overwhelming. But you know what the good news is that's the way life is. That can be viewed as bad news. That can be seen as a bad thing. But it's a good thing to know that life is messes. And they can help put you in a perspective that sees those messes differently. And you know what? More importantly than that, the other part of this good news is that it's the common ground. It's that we're all there. We're all in it together. We're all standing knee deep in mud. And that's okay. That's what allows us to relate to other people. If you never had a mess, how can you talk to other people about theirs? You have no idea. So part of the good news is that these messes are our common ground, which allows us to communicate with each other on a level playing field that knows if you're in the middle of a mess, I can help you. And hopefully when I'm in the middle of a mess, you'll help me. Because it's the common ground. It's what unites us all. Problems and issues and struggles is what unites us all. Because even on our best days, there's probably a bad day coming around the corner. And this can be our common ground. And see, because it's our common ground, it's why we should be careful when tempted to criticize. Because we look at other people in their lives, we look at the issues that they're in, and then we like to elevate ourselves a little bit by saying, well, at least I'm not dealing with that. I would have never done that. The car ride home after you're over at the family's house and you're going, what about this? Did you see him? Did you hear what she said? Because we'd like to take that moment and feel just a little bit better about ourselves and the issues we're going through. For a moment, When we're criticizing other people's struggles, our struggles disappear. It makes us feel good. But the problem is, as soon as that's over, our messes, our struggles, our issues, they come back. And they come back bigger than they were before. Because in this attempt to make other people's struggles look worse than your own, you're wasting time not figuring out how to fix your own messes. And it compounds on itself, and it gets worse, and it gets worse, and it gets uglier and uglier. And you know, this verse, you've probably heard it before. First, get rid of the log in your own eye, and then you will see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye. That's not saying we can't help people until we have all of our problems figured out. That's definitely not what it's saying. But what it's saying is before we can help other people, we need to get the glaring and the most obvious and the most awful messes and situations gone and taken care of, so that you can help people when they have specks in their eyes. It's not for us to focus on fixing other people. It's for us to focus on fixing ourselves, so that when we've worked through that, we can help other people with those same situations or other situations free of distractions on our own part. It's why we should be careful to criticize careful when tempted to criticize. And you know what? It's why we need each other. It's exactly why we need each other. These struggles, these issues, these problems that we have are not meant for us to fight on our own. That's why we have church. It's not just so we can sit here, sing some songs, and listen to this weird guy up front and then go home. It's so that we can come together right now. And we can help each other with our struggles and our issues. And we can say, you know what, I dealt with that a couple months ago. Here's what I tried, and this seemed to work for me. Next thing you know, this church isn't just a place to sit and have fun together, but instead is a working community that assists other people when they have struggles and problems and issues. And you know what? Sometimes when you're in your mess, sometimes when you're in the middle of it, you have no idea. You have no idea. Just like the little kid with the peanut butter. He didn't know. He didn't know it was a mess. It took his mother telling him that it was a mess. He had no idea. He was having fun with it. And you know what? What better place to know when you're in the middle of a mess and you don't know it? What better place than when you're dating? Is that not true? When you're dating, you have no idea about anything else. Nothing. It's like you're wearing a pair of binoculars permanently. And all that's in it is the one that you love. And you can't see any of the negatives. You can't see any of the issues. You can't see any of the problems. You don't see what's coming 20 years off. You only see today and whether or not I've kissed her today. Have I told her that I love her yet? I don't think so. You know, when's the last time that her and I went out and just had a great evening together, thinking about nothing but us and the hands we're holding? Because you see nothing else. Am I wrong? This was me. This is what happened. In my dating years, I remember that I was dating this person who wasn't the best. And I didn't know it. We were together and we were doing stuff. I'd bring her over to my friend's house and we'd do all kinds of things. And it wasn't until after I stopped being with her that my friends went, dude, how could you spend time with that train wreck? And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? She was the worst. And I'm like, why didn't you say anything? They're like, we did. And I'm like, oh, okay, so apparently I'm just like those cartoons when they smell the pie and they float in. That was me in love, I guess. I had no idea what was going on. And it takes other people to tell us these things. And if other people won't tell us these things, if we don't work together with other people, we'll never know. We need people to look into our messes and help us through them. Not as a means to criticize, not as a mean to belittle people or to serve judgment to them, but instead to help them so that they can know Christ more, so that together we can know Christ more, and that when my life is in a mess, they can help me. And that's how it works. It's a circle. We help each other. And there's no better place to go with your mess than one of these places. You have to go to a men's group. You have to go to a women's study. Not because it's a requirement, not because you need to check it off your list, but because you're a mess. And so am I. And what a better place to be than a group full of other people who are in just as bad of a mess as you. Because then sitting across from each other in these moments, sitting across from each other in a men's group or a women's group, you can say, you know what, I've had a really awful week, and this is why. And then these other people who have a different view of where you're at can speak into your lives and keep you from just floating off unknowingly towards your mess. You need people. We need each other. We need to know that the reason we're pulling that log out of somebody else's eye is to assist them to be more like Christ so their life can be less stressed out by all the messes that they will inevitably have. And that together we can work through these issues. We can help each other grow. You don't grow without other people. I'm going to say that again. You don't grow without other people. You see, you need God in your life. You need everything God has to offer. You need to live your life like Jesus and be more like Jesus. But even Jesus spent almost all of his time with other people. And it wasn't so we could create a club. It wasn't so that we could just have fun and go home. It was so that we could work together as iron sharpens iron to shave it off and to make life a little bit easier, to work through our issues, to work through our struggles. You won't grow if you don't spend time with other people. And that's the importance of men's group. That's the importance of women's group. That's the importance of church. That's the importance of going out together on a Friday and spending time together. That's the importance of having people over to your house, because we can't just live in a cave our whole life. We need to grow, so we need other people. And ultimately, with those other people and us, that will bring us closer together and then closer to God in the same time. We need to spend time together. We need to work through our messes together. Messes were not meant to be handled alone. If you're in the middle of a mess right now and you can't see a way out, if you don't spend time with other people, if you don't ask other people for help, you're never gonna get there. God has given you other individuals to work through these messes together. And you have to be not afraid to tell people, I need help. That's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. We need to work together to know God through the assistance of other individuals who can help us see through our messes. You see, the mess is the lens through which we discover God. Messes happen. You lost your job yesterday. Welcome to life. You lost a relative yesterday. Welcome. You're part of the mess now. You had an issue. You lost your money. You lost your home. You lost your spouse. You lost a dog. Whatever it is. Life is a mess. And we need to work it together. And that mess is what allows us to see who God truly is, because our messes don't define us, but our messes are the lens in which we see God. It's when we realize that we can't do it on our own. It's when we realize that the struggle is real and I can't figure a way out. The moment when you've tried everything, when you've done everything you can think of, is the moment you'll go, all right, God, it's your turn. Because those messes will show us God, and they will lead us to God, and they will teach us about who God is through them. And someday, after you've gotten through that mess, you'll be able to tell other people, this is what I did. This is how I did this. This is how I worked through it. And it all starts with knowing who God is in that mess. I want to read some verses from Romans. It's great. It just helps us understand what life is like with messes and how we need to work through them. How we need to focus on our messes first. Look at the mess in the mirror before we start helping other people. We really need to work on how we affect other people's lives. But first, we need to look at the mess in the mirror. This is in Romans. It says, obviously, the law applies to those whom it was given. Now he's talking about believers. He's talking about people at this moment who understand that the law was given to them so that they know what's going on in their lives. When he talks about the law, he talks about the Old Testament law. He talks about the law that was given to Moses, the 10 Commandments. You know them. Maybe not all of them. But we know of them, and that's what he's referencing here. He's saying the law applies to those who it was given, believers. We understand it. And through that, through looking at that law, through looking at the Ten Commandments, through looking at the Old Testament law, it can help us understand the mess that we're in. In fact, you've heard this phrase before, nobody's perfect. See, people, whether they are a believer or not, still say this phrase. Whether they believe in God, whether they believe in Christ, still say nobody's perfect. That's implying that they believe there's a perfect that they're not. See, even if you don't believe in God, you still ascend to this understanding that there is a perfectness that is achievable. We're just not quite there yet. So when we say this phrase, we're acknowledging that as believers, the Old Testament law, nobody's perfect. Nobody's been able to stand up to all of this law and say, I've got it, I've figured it out, I understand all of it. Nobody's perfect. And you know what? That law, regardless of who you get it from, that's what you live by. Whether you're a believer or not, you've chosen to live by that law. It continues. It says, obviously, the law applies to those to whom it was given, for its purpose is to keep people from having excuses and to show that the entire world is guilty before God. You see, that law helps us understand the mess that we're in. When you read the Word, when you read the Bible, when you're going through it, when you look at the law, when you understand what we've decided to follow, it will help us understand that we're all guilty, and this is what the mess is that we're in. And regardless of whether you're a believer or not, you are accountable to whoever sets the standard you accept. Maybe it's America's law. Maybe it's your club's law. Maybe it's family's law. Maybe it's a tradition that you've had forever. Maybe that's what you live by. But whatever it is you choose to live by, you've set a standard that you're trying to get to. And the law that's given to believers is the same thing. We understand that this is where I want to be. This is where I want to get to. And that law helps us see the mess that we're in so that we can identify it to work through it. It goes on in Romans, it says this, for no one can ever be made right with God by doing what the law commands. The law simply shows us how sinful we are. Now, a lot of people will look at the law. A lot of people will look at the things in the Bible. A lot of them will look at how Jesus lived or how God treated the people in the Old Testament. And they will say, okay, I need to do this. I need to not do that. I need to do this. And, inevitably, the law just becomes some giant checklist. And hoping that my life will be less messy by doing all the right things. But that's not what the verse says, right? Let's read it again. The verse says, for no one can ever be made right with God. Okay, pause. No one can ever be made right with God. If there was a period there, that would change this completely. But it's not. It continues. For no one can ever be made right with God by doing what the law commands. So in other words, you can't check enough boxes. You can't fix enough stuff. You can't get rid of enough mess to make yourself right with God. You can't be a perfect enough person to be right with God. You can't have the least amount of messes in your life to become right with God. Now that sounds scary if there wasn't one more line after that. The law simply shows us how sinful we are. So if we can look at the law, if we can go through the Bible, if we can see what it's saying, we can look at all of this and we can put it onto our lives. It doesn't say fix all of these things. Instead, it says, look at how sinful you are. Look at the life that you're living. Look at all the struggles that you're dealing with. Look at all the pain and the suffering. Understand the mess that you're in. And you will know how sinful you are. So rather than checking off all the boxes, we need to just understand how sinful we are. It says this in Romans, we are made right with God by placing our faith in Jesus Christ. So did you put the two verses together? The first one says that you cannot be made right by doing the law. You cannot be made right by making your life more perfect. You cannot be made right by being less messy. But you are made right with God by placing your faith in Jesus Christ. See, that doesn't mean we don't fix the messes in our lives. That doesn't mean we don't work through the struggles in our lives. But instead, like Paul says in Romans, we are no longer slaves to sin. We're no longer ruled by it. We're no longer controlled by our messes. We're not defined by our messes. Jesus came not as a God of justice, throwing out condemnation to everybody, but instead as a God of grace and forgiveness and compassion and understanding. And he spoke into people's lives. He reached into their messes and he grabbed them by the hand and he pulled them out. Not because their lives would be better with the absence of mess, but that their life would be better with the presence of God. That's where we're at. If you're in the middle of a struggle, if you're in the middle of pain, if you're in the middle of a mess that you just don't know how to get out of, put it behind you. Move forward. Because life is messy. Not parts of it, not some of it, all of it. Life is a mess, and we're just doing our best to go uphill and become more like Jesus day after day. Not by being less messy, but understanding what the messes are in our lives and putting more of God into the midst of our messes so that we can live better, less stressful lives. You see, the first thing to understanding the mess in your mirror is understanding that Jesus paid a price to instead not be the reflection of you in that mirror in your mess, but a reflection of him. Jesus does not want to take you out of your messes, but he wants you to understand the importance of him in them as we go through them. Your life will have messes all the time. You may not be in one now. You may be one that's really bad. You may be in a small one. You may have some big ones coming up that you're just not looking forward to. But those messes don't define you. Instead, Jesus defines those messes, and you can work through them and become more free. You're no longer controlled by these messes or dealing with these issues and these struggles. Instead, you'll look through them as you move forward, not controlled or overcome by them, but knowing who Jesus is through them. Because life is messy. Every part of it. You will have messes. And it takes a perspective of who Jesus is in your life to work through those. Not because you need to be mess-free, but because you need to know the amazingness that is Jesus Christ in your life through those messes. It ends a little section of verses with this. It says, "For all have sinned and all fall short of the glory of God." Good news, everybody. We all suck. We do. And it's okay. Because the messes, they're here to show us the glory that is of Jesus Christ working through them to get us to a new point in life that is no longer controlled by messes, that is no longer defined by messes, but instead is defined by Jesus. And then through him, we can affect the lives of people that we live with. God wants us to help other people so that we can help ourselves, so that we can grow together and know God even more. And we have to understand that perspective of who Jesus is in our life and in our messes before we can move forward. It is only through our mess that we know we need God and other people. It's only through our mess that we know we need God, because in those moments when we can't figure it out, when we can't work through it, when we're just overwhelmed by it, when life has thrown you a curveball and you don't know how to move forward, when you're looking at the mess you're in and you think to yourself, I can't figure this out, that's when you know you need God. When you've tried all the doctors, when you've tried all the people, when you've tried all the services, when you've read all the books and you have nothing left, you finally say, God, I need you in this mess because I will never be able to do it on my own. Those messes help us understand who God is. And we can't do it on our own. We can't do it without God. And we can't do it without other people. recognize the mess in your mirror by putting God and Jesus in that reflection, and your messes won't control you. Your messes won't define you. Your messes will help you find Jesus. And life will be a little less overwhelming when you know who Jesus is and you know his role in your life. Your life won't get better with an absence of messes, but it will get better with the presence of Jesus Christ. Let me pray with you this morning. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for your presence in our life. Thank you so much for helping us see our messes, and thank you so much for